We whisper of them in hushed tones, relegated to campfire tales and faded scripture. Giants. Once they walked the earth, these towering things of bone and gristle etched across the dawn of history. Genesis speaks of the Nephilim, monstrous offspring of angels and men, so large they blotted out the sun with their passing. Goliath, felled by a shepherd's sling, a mere echo of their primeval terror. But are these stories just the ravings of the ancients? Or is there a truth buried deep within the earth, waiting to be unearthed? Bones have been unearthed, whispers of forgotten cities built for a race beyond our reckoning. They may be gone, these titans. Dust returned to dust. But what drove them from this world? And what if something else, something monstrous, took their place?
Martin Van Buren Bates. Last time we spoke about Anna Haining Bates, and today we are talking about her husband, Martin. These two were an insanely tall couple. In fact, Martin was known as the Kentucky Giant. Records show that his height really jumped up around the age of 6 or 7, and by the time he was 12 years old, he stood over 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. In the end, he certainly was not done growing, as he grew to be 7'9" and he weighed 475 pounds. After Anna passed away in 1888, Martin did remarry, and his life is said to have been relatively peaceful until his passing in 1919. He passed away from nephritis. After his passing, he was buried beside Anna and their son. Martin is said to still hold the title of tallest person to ever live until at least 80 years old, which honestly is quite remarkable. In our number 9 spot today, we have Julius Cook. Julius lived from 1872 until March of 1902, and during his life he was often referred to as Constantine the Giant. Julius is one of the tallest people ever. At the age of 14 years old, he already measured 6'4". During his life, his height was advertised as being 8'6", but many people speculate that this was a bit of an exaggeration, as his skeleton measured 8'1", although no one is quite certain exactly what his height was, which we will get to in a second. Although maybe not the tallest man ever, Julius did set his own record, as he had the longest femurs ever measured at 76 centimeters or 30 inches. Julius's height is attributed to gigantism with an enlarged pituitary gland, and unfortunately, Julius had quite a bit of trouble walking. Like I mentioned before, Julius's height hasn't been confirmed and has only ever been estimated because of the fact that after a series of bad falls, his legs were really badly injured. This left gangrene setting in, after which his legs had to be amputated. This is why unfortunately his exact height is difficult to know for sure. Julius's skeleton is preserved at the Museum of Natural History in Mons, Belgium. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Ancient Giant. Back in 1991, researchers were excavating a necropolis in Fidene, which in ancient times would have been a territory that was indirectly managed by Rome. During this excavation, experts came across a tomb that was abnormally long, and after examination, they too learned that the bones were also unusual. This discovery would later go on to become the first complete ancient skeleton of a person with gigantism. Measured to be 6'8", this person would have been a giant in the 3rd century AD in Rome, where the average man stood about 5.5 feet tall. The team was able to confirm this gigantism diagnosis when they found the skull, although they were pretty certain beforehand due to the size difference seen in this set of bones compared to the average bones for the time period. Although this discovery is an incredible one, we still know very little about what life would have been like for a giant in ancient Rome. In our number 7 spot today, we have Sandy Allen. For this one, firstly, I have to shout out a most amazing top 10 viewer who goes by the YouTube screen name Angelisa Cephas, because they commented on part 1 of this video and gave me the info I needed to include Sandy Allen on this list today. Yeah, I'm lurking in the comments. get nervous about it. Never know what I'm gonna see there. Thank you, Angelisa. Now let's talk about Sandy Allen. Sandy lived in Shelbyville, Indiana, and her life spanned from 1955 until 2008. During her life, she was recognized by the Guinness World Records as the tallest woman in the world. She was recorded as being 7 feet 7 inches tall, and her height was a result of the fact that she had a tumor on her pituitary gland that caused it to release growth hormone uncontrollably, like somewhere between 200 to 1,000 times more than usual. In 1977, when she was 22 years old, she underwent surgery for her condition because if she hadn't, she would have just continued to grow. Throughout her life, Sandy appeared on TV, in documentaries, and even had a song written about her. Later in life, unfortunately, Sandy found herself having to use a wheelchair because her legs and back were unable to support her tall stature. While she passed away in 2008, in 2020, her friend and manager John Kleeman donated a collection of her memorabilia to Ripley's museums. In our number 6 spot today, we have Väinö Millerin. Väinö was born in Helsinki, Finland in 1909, and he lived up until 1963. Because of some issues he had with his pituitary gland, he stood 7'4" when he was just 21 years old, but this was not the end of his growth spurt. Oh no, he experienced another in his late 30s, which is when he grew to be 8'4". During his life, he not only traveled Europe as a wrestler, but he also served time in the Finnish army. This is where he began to be considered the tallest soldier ever. After his time wrestling and serving the country, in 1946 he moved to where he could run a chicken farm, which is where he spent the rest of his life. Just a year before his death, as he was being measured at the doctor, his hand span was measured to be 290 millimeters or 11.4 inches, which is thought to be one of the largest known. In our number 5 spot today, we've got Don Kohler. Don is a man who was born in the United States in 1925, and he lived until 1981. Don is another one of the few people who can be added to the list of humans who were able to reach over 8 feet tall, as it is recorded that Don grew to be 8'2". Don and his twin sister were born to parents who were slightly above average height. His mother was 5'10" and his father was 6'2", but Don was the only one in the family at the time who reached these record-holding heights. Don's twin sister grew to be 5'9", which means that there was a distance of 2 feet and 5 inches between the two, which is a record recognized by Guinness. Don explained that the most difficult piece of clothing to find to fit his size was socks, and thankfully later in his life a hosiery company in Pennsylvania started custom making him socks. Later in his life, Don would unfortunately suffer from kyphosis, which resulted in some severe curvature of the spine. At 55 years old, Don passed from a heart condition and, as per his wishes, he was cremated and then his ashes spread on Lake Wisconsin, where he loved to fish. In our number 4 spot today, we have Suleiman Ali Nashnush. Suleiman was a Libyan basketball player who turned actor, and in fact he is one of the tallest basketball players ever. He grew to be just shy of 8'1", although during his basketball career he was measured at 7'10". He was born in 1943, and in 1960 he successfully went through surgery that helped to slow down his growth. Throughout his life, he was able to play a small role in the Federico Fellini film Fellini Satyricon, where he played an attendant. Suleiman passed away in 1991. In our number 3 spot today, we have John Rogan. Not to be confused with the podcaster and comedian Joe Rogan, John is the second tallest man known in history. Born in 1867, John grew to be 8'9.5 inches, which is second to only Robert Wadlow, who we talked about on part 1. John was born in Tennessee and was the 4th of 12 children. He grew extremely rapidly, which unfortunately led to ankylosis, which caused abnormal rigidity of the skeletal joints. By 1882, this sadly left John unable to stand or walk. John was still able to make a living despite this mobility issue, and to do this he sold portraits and postcards at the train station. Many offers came his way to perform in the circus and in sideshows, but John declined them all. It is said that John used a goat pull cart as a wheelchair, and that everywhere he went he was the center of attention, not only for his height, but because he had just a big and lovely personality. There is a record stating that John's maternal grandfather was also a giant, requiring a larger saddle when riding a horse, so it is thought that perhaps there might have been some genetics at play here. John lived until 1905, in that year he passed away on September 12th. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Giant of Castleknock. A little different from most of the other people on this list, the Giant of Castleknock is the term used to refer to 3 bone fragments, a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft, that were discovered by a French anthropologist in 1890. He found these bones in the sediment used to cover a Bronze Age burial tumulus that some think might even date back to the Neolithic. If his his measurements and estimates are correct, whoever these bones belong to would have been the largest human to be known to have existed. This is because, based on the bone size, he has estimated that this person would have been 11 foot 6. Of course, without the rest of the bones, this is hard to confirm for sure, and it's important to note that there hasn't been a modern review done on these bones just yet. Perhaps it's something worth pursuing, however, especially if it means we could confirm the existence of a human who was 11.5 feet tall. In our number 1 spot today, we have Andrei Rene Roussimoff. When we think about real-life giants, of course, many of our minds go to none other than Andre the Giant. Born in France in 1946, Andre later went on to become a successful wrestler and professional actor. His gigantism caused him to grow to be 7'4", and this left him often being referred to as the 8th wonder of the world. After finding quite a bit of success in his wrestling career, Andre began finding himself starring in many movies, including the 1984 classic Conan the Destroyer, where he starred opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger, or his most recognizable role of Fezzik the Giant in the 1987 film The Princess Bride. Andre met quite a sudden and unexpected death at the age of 46 after suffering from congested heart failure. After his death, the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame described him as, quote, one of the most recognizable figures in the world, both as a professional wrestler and as a pop culture icon.
Giant of Castelnau. Our first stop is the Giant of Castelnau, discovered in 1890 by George Voucher de la Ponge. Sorry, I definitely butchered that. This tale revolves around 3 bone fragments, a humerus, a tibia, and a femoral midshaft. According to these discoveries, these fossils might just belong to one of the mightiest humans ever documented, at an astounding stature of 11 feet and 6 inches tall. Published in the Journal of Nature, George's findings point to the Neolithic period, deep within a Bronze Age burial tulumus. The bones, unquestionably human despite their colossal size, received detailed scrutiny. A femur shaft boasting 14 centimeters in length and 16 in circumference, a tibia fragment measuring 26 centimeters, and a peculiar lower humerus piece. Experts at the University of Montpellier meticulously studied these massive bones, and so the enigma of the Giant of Castelnau remains a towering testament to history's secrets. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support this channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Emperor Maximinus. Emperor Gaius Julius Verus Maximinus Augustus, or Maximinus Thrax, stands tall in history as a colossal figure with the brutal reign that rattled the Roman Empire, who reads like a historical supervillain what with his name, stature, and position. Born in 173 AD, he climbed the military ladder to seize power, reflecting his tumultuous era. At 8 feet tall, his imposing stature set him apart, a physical embodiment of sheer strength. His loyalty-winning blend of military and physical prowess propelled him to the imperial throne in 235 AD, defying Rome's traditional aristocracy. But his rule was plunged into a nightmare of cruelty and dread. Emerging from a common soldier origins seemed to shape his chilling cruelty. Ruling as a despot with an iron fist, oppression weighed heavy on his subjects, burdened by taxing labor that drained their life force. As he focused outward, uprisings simmered within. In 238 AD, a coalition of anger coalesced against him, culminating in a storm of conflict and chaos, marking the climax of Maximinus's dark saga. One can only wonder how they confronted this 8-foot-tall tyrant. At number 8 is Cave Remains. Venturing into the obscure corners of history, we uncover a perplexing tale of a forgotten giant. Discovered in the enigmatic depths of a flooded cave system in Mexico's Caribbean coast, a prehistoric human skeleton emerges from the shadows, veiled in mystery. Submerged beneath 26 feet of water and cloaked by sediment, this relic of the past has remained concealed for over 8,000 years, concealed by the very forces that once shaped it. Archaeologist Octavio del Rio, alongside his partners, Octavio del Rio encountered this ancient enigma while exploring the cave's labyrinth passages. The skull shattered, the skeleton fragmented, it raises puzzling questions. Was this a deliberate resting place, or the site of an untimely demise? As the Mexican government plans a high-speed tourist train through the nearby jungle, this discovery adds an intriguing layer to the region's history. But the story doesn't end there. Delving further, we find ourselves amidst the cenotes, sinkhole caves that have yielded some of North America's oldest human remains. Unraveling the true age of this submerged sentinel requires meticulous study, dating, photographic analysis, and careful collection. Yet as we piece together the past, one fact remains clear: this real-life giant's secrets have broken free from the clutches of time, inviting us to rewrite history's narrative. At number 7 is the 7-foot skeletons. Over 1,000 accounts of massive 7-foot tall and even taller skeletons have been unearthed from ancient burial sites across North America. Yeah, that's right, not one or two, but thousands. These reports span a period of around 2 centuries and have been meticulously documented documented in various sources. Think newspapers, country histories, diaries, and scientific journals, just to name a few. Now, these skeletons aren't just of your run-of-the-mill variety. We're talking double rows of teeth, jawbones that could practically engulf a person's face, and elongated skulls that defy the norm. Scientists have acknowledged that at least 17 of these towering skeletons in their annual reports. Additionally, a skull with a mind-boggling 36-inch circumference was found, where the average human skull is around 20 inches. It's all there in black and white, buried within the annals of history. But the question is, why aren't we hearing more about these colossal anomalies? At number 6, a new species. In 2021, a colossal revelation was made. A newly discovered species, a 2-meter long skull of an ichthyosauur, rewrote the pages of history. Forget human giants, these giants ruled the waves. Long before dinosaurs roamed, these aquatic reptiles dominated, boasting remarkable size and diversity. Intriguingly, they emerged from an enigmatic group of land-based reptiles, defying expectations with their air-breathing prowess. Scientists explain that these fish saurians hail from an era even predating dinosaurs. Unearthed from Nevada's Fossil Hill member, this remarkably preserved giant skull and body parts date back to the Middle Triassic, around 247 million years ago. Imagine a colossal creature larger than a sperm whale reigning over the land and sea, the Earth's first known giant, rewriting our understanding of ancient enormity. At number 5, Goliath. A towering Philistine warrior of over 9 feet, Goliath embodies terror and challenges courage itself. Clad in metal and leather, his form loomed over battlefields, exuding malevolence that shook even valiant warriors. But then comes David, armed with a slingshot and audacious faith. Facing this monstrous foe, David's defiance baffles logic. He steps forth, fires a rock, and miraculously hits Goliath square in the face. Scientists suggest that Goliath's colossal size might have been due to a vulnerability-inducing hormone syndrome. A single rock to the forehead does the trick, and Goliath falls. This tale birthed the first underdog story, with David overcoming impossible odds. While giants may be rare today, these stories remind us of our smallness in the universe. At number 4, ancient burial mounds. The following puns are in fact intended. Digging into the past, we unearth a peculiar puzzle that historians might not be so eager to talk about: real-life giants. Now, I'm not talking about Jack of the Beanstalk here, but rather ancient burial mounds in America that held a giant surprise. In the late 1800s New England, skeletons were uncovered measuring a towering 7 to 10 feet. These were no small town tales. Credible newspapers of the time reported these finds, and it doesn't stop there. Giant skeletons popped up like surprises in a storybook all across America. But the giant saga doesn't confine itself to the land of stars and stripes. Travel to Sardinia and you'll find whispers of tombs hiding the bones of giants towering over 12 meters tall. Now things get even more interesting. Allegedly, the Smithsonian, that grand institution of knowledge, had a curious interest in purchasing these giant remains from civilizations. But these bones vanished into thin air. A parallel mystery unfolds in Sardinia as well, where farmers stumbled upon colossal bones and dutifully handed them over to authorities, only to find silence in return. So are we just tall tales away from rewriting history? The enigma of these real-life giants remains a riddle yet to be solved. At number 3, Alton the Giant. Born in 1918, Robert Waldo soared to over 8 feet 11 inches due to an overactive pituitary gland. His extraordinary growth was both a wonder and a burden. Early on, he outgrew his peers, and by age 8, he stood at 6 foot 2 inches. But this gigantism came with complications. Finding fitting clothes and dealing with constant pain due to his enormous frame were just some of his struggles. Fame wasn't kind either, as he was parodied like a circus act, overshadowing his humanity. Despite trying to lead a normal life and engaging in charity work, Waldo's mental and emotional well-being deteriorated. Tragically, an infection from an ill-fitting leg brace led to his demise at 22. At number 2 is John Rogan. Not to be confused with Joe Rogan, the podcaster, who dwarfs in comparison. Meet John Rogan, a name less known than his towering height. Born in 1967, he grew to an astounding 8 feet 9.5 inches, earning him the title of the second tallest person in history, just after Robert Waldo. Hailing from Tennessee and being the fourth amid 12 siblings, his growth was rapid but came at a cost. Ankylosis, a condition causing joint rigidity, struck him in 1882, rendering him unable to walk. However, John didn't let this hinder his livelihood. Stationed at a train station, he supported himself by selling portraits and postcards. Despite circus and sideshow offers, he declined, maintaining his dignity. Legend has it that he used a goat-pulled cart as a wheelchair, always drawing attention not only due to his height, but also his large-hearted personality. There's even a record indicating his giant lineage from his maternal grandfather, possibly suggesting a genetic link. John lived until 1905, leaving behind a legacy that refuses to stand in anyone else's shadows. And at number 1, what were giants Actually, imagine a world where giants actually roam the earth, not the kind with beanstalks or one-eyed creatures, but real-life giants that history seems to have swept under the rug. See, back in the day, before Skip and Uber Eats, our ancestors were the ultimate foodies, hunter-gatherers dining on a buffet of nature's bounty. This diverse menu, along with their semi-nomadic lifestyle, made them tall and robust, standing shoulder to shoulder with today's tallest folks. But then, bam! Agriculture strutted in with its monoculture of wheat and occasional meat cameo, stringing us to hobbit heights for the millennia. Now, agriculture took some time to spread across humanity, enough time for a huge height difference to develop between hunter-gatherer tribes and farming villages, and eventually tiny farmers would meet towering nomads. These agriculturalists side-eyed the hunters with their Flintstone-esque tools and their on-the-go lifestyle, all while munching on their fields and herds. To farmers, giants were brutish and boundary blind, traits now echoed in myths. So the myths of giants might be ancient memoirs of agrarian angst, highlighting the friction between farmers and foragers. In a world where size mattered, it seems like it was survival of the biggest.
The smallest animal on this list, although it's by no means small for what it is. In this video uploaded by Exotics Lair, we see the cameraman come across a giant forest ant, and boy oh boy, does this ant live up to its name. Imagine having a picnic in the forest and having a trail of these ants invade. Hailing from the forests of Southeast Asia, these ants can get pretty big. I mean, just look at it. At one point, he puts it in a plastic container and you can really see the size of it compared to his hand. It's crazy. A regular sized everyday vanilla ant coming across one of these would be like one of us coming across one of the giants from Attack on Titan. Poor ants. They live in a world where they might actually meet a giant version of their own kind, let alone, you know, all the other massive sized animals they have to deal with. Just imagine if there was a species of actual giant human beings roaming around somewhere in the forest. Number 9, the giant golden-crowned flying fox. This is a species of megabat, native to the Philippines, and is one of the largest bat species in the world. Its wingspan can reach up to 5.5 feet, or 1.7 meters. So this thing could easily wrap its wings around a small child. Now, luckily, these are one of those bat species that have those cute, almost dog-like faces. If these things looked more like vampire bats, I'd straight up just never go to this part of the world. Watching these things fly through the air, though, they look like gargoyles instead of bats. They have some pretty gnarly claws, too. They also, unfortunately, don't eat meat, which is nice. The last thing you'd ever want to see is, you know, watching one of these things swoop down and try to take a chomp out of your head or like fly off with your dog or something. The giant centipede. All right, so try to watch this next clip without feeling your skin crawl. Not that you can really have much control over that, but just, I don't know, try to watch it without itching and just feeling icky. This is seeking out one of these adorable animals for yourself. Number 7, the coconut crab. So these are the largest terrestrial crabs on the planet. They can weigh up to 9 pounds and their legs can span more than 3 feet. It's not even just their size though. They have this creepy alien looking vibe going on. Their eyes also glow in the dark, which gives them a very eerie, otherworldly look. You can just imagine walking around the beach at night and seeing these glowing eyes staring back at you. Anyway, you'll find these monstrous creatures lurking in the tropical regions of the Indian and Pacific Oceans, so fair warning if you decide to take a trip out there. Just imagine sun tanning on the beach, you're half naked, you're as relaxed as ever, completely vulnerable, right? And then one of these things climbs over to you. Because yeah, again, they don't look like it, but these crabs chill out on land. You can find them climbing on trees, attacking birds, chilling on garbage cans, like in this image here. Yeah, no thanks. I'm really sorry. Everyone's gonna have these creepy crawly nightmares after watching this video. Those are the worst. You know, when you wake up and you just feel like there's stuff on you and you like check under your sheets just expecting there to be some kind of bug or something. I hate those mornings. So yeah, let me know if that happens to you tomorrow. Number 6, the golf course gator. All right, we've talked about a lot of animals that are large, but only unsettling for just being kind of icky, but this is an animal that could easily devour you. This video was taken on a golf course in Naples, Florida, and shows what looks to be a dinosaur walking across the green. It almost looks fake, like it could be CG or something, like your eyes just can't even believe what they're seeing, but this is not a scene from Jurassic Park. This is actually a massive alligator walking across a golf course. At one point, the cameraman tells his buddy to, quote, get next to it for perspective. How about just run? Or at least stay as far away as possible if you really have to film it. We can see how big it is. Foliage in the background and the hole, that's perspective enough. I don't play golf, so what's the hole called? It's just the dirt. You could see it. It's walking right next to it. It's like the size of it. It's insane. Just imagine if this thing stopped and turned its head and just started booking it towards them. Gators can actually move surprisingly fast if they want to. Not as fast as the average human, thankfully, but fast enough. You know, enough to give you a heart attack if you saw it running towards you. Next up, we have an elephant seal attacking a car. Elephant seals can reach up to 13 feet in length with a weight of a whopping 4,500 pounds. Just imagine this big boy like throwing all of its size on you. You'd be flattened into like a cartoon pancake. Speaking of cartoons, this little guy's name is Homer, which is exactly what he should be named. I can't think of a better name for this guy. But just look at how these cars shake as it smashes its head into them. It doesn't even look like it's trying that hard. It's just having a bit of fun here. So again, just picture it crashing its 4,500 pound frame into your measly human body. We just really forget how fragile we are sometimes. As threatening as this guy is, though, he somehow manages to look cute and lovable at the same time. I'd much rather meet Homer here than the next animal we have on the list. Yeah, we're back to the creepy crawlies with the giant weta. These massive insects can be found in New Zealand. There are 11 species of giant weta, with the largest being the Little Barrier Island giant weta. Now, these things won't bite you, they aren't poisonous or anything like that, but I'm just ish. In this YouTube video uploaded by Mino's Nature New Zealand, we see our cameraman come across one of these giant crickets in the daytime, which is rare. They typically only come out at night. At one point, he puts his hand beside it for perspective, and yeah, surprise, surprise, as you can see, it's big. I'd just be scared waiting for this thing to get startled and hop off. Apparently, they're too heavy to hop like regular crickets, but I'd still be bracing myself for it just in case. I haven't been able to find any audio of them chirping either, but I imagine it's not quite as relaxing as regular crickets chirping. It's gotta be like deafening. Here's one you've probably seen if you tune into Shark Week every summer. At number 3, we have Deep Blue. Deep Blue is something of a celebrity shark. She's a great white who's known for her massive size. She's around 20 feet in length and is estimated to weigh around 4,400 pounds. She's one of the biggest great white sharks ever filmed. She's basically the real life Jaws, except she's thankfully far less aggressive. In fact, she seems quite docile. There's footage of divers swimming alongside her. A couple of them have even touched her fins. Not a smart idea, not even just for the obvious fact that you're getting way too close to an animal that could eat you like a 2-bite brownie, but it's also just kind of harassing the animal. But speaking of that, at number 2, we have a giant anaconda. In this next video, we see a crew of fishermen pursuing the Loch Ness Monster in the Santa Maria River in Brazil. Honestly, it really does look like some kind of mythical sea serpent moving through the water. Just look at how girthy its body is. It's likely that the snake had recently eaten. That's why it has this big swollen section of its body. But even without that, though, the rest of it is also huge. It's obviously digesting something. One of these guys grabs the snake by the end of the tail and they try to drag it out of the river, which is awful. They ended up receiving a pretty hefty fine for this, rightfully so. Not only is it mean to the animal, though, but is this really the type of creature you want to piss off? Sure, anacondas, they're not poisonous, but their bodies are basically just one big muscle, and their jaws are also very powerful. I can't even imagine how long this one is. We never actually see its head, but from what we do see of it, the thing is an absolute beast. And taking that number 1 spot we have a giant squid. Giant squids are really cool because at one point in time, they were simply thought of as a myth until it was discovered that they do indeed exist. Makes me wonder what other deep sea creatures there are dwelling down there. Now, there isn't a whole lot of giant squid footage as they inhabit the deep depths of the sea, but in this video taken by divers off the west coast of Japan, they captured a live giant squid on camera. This one measuring around 2.5 meters, or just over 8 feet, which is crazy. Like, that's bigger than any person on, well, not any person on Earth, but most people on Earth. It's scary imagining swimming next to something this large, but at the same time, there's also something so peaceful about the way it moves through the water. It's very beautiful. This isn't even the biggest giant squid on record though, not even close. Somewhere in the depths of the sea, there's like a real life kraken floating around, I bet. Hopefully one day we can see footage of that.
Tallest man ever. Robert Pershing Waldo was born on February 22nd, 1918 and passed away on July 15th, 1940. He was known as the Alton Giant and the Giant of Illinois, and was an American man who was the tallest person in recorded history. He was born and raised in Alton, Illinois, a small city near St. Louis, Missouri. Robert's height was 8 feet and 11.1 inches, while his weight reached 439 pounds at his death at the age of 22. His great size and his continued growth in adulthood were due to hypertrophy of his pituitary gland, which result in an abnormally high level of human growth hormone. Even by the time of his death, there was no indication that his growth had ended. He was taller than his father by age 8, and in elementary school a special desk was made for him. By the time of his graduation from Alton High School in 1936, he was 8 feet and 4 inches. He required leg braces when walking and had little feeling in his legs and feet, but he never used a wheelchair. Robert also became a celebrity after his 1936 US tour with the Ringling Brothers Circus, appearing at Madison Square Garden and the Boston Garden in the center ring. Number 9. Bigfoot. Now, hear me out. Bigfoot is a large, hairy, human-like creature believed to exist in the northwestern United States and western Canada. It's described as bipedal, measuring up to 9 feet in height and 800 pounds in weight, and covered in long, dark hair. Is it truly a giant? I think so. There have been many sightings of Bigfoot. It first started in Canada as early as 1884 when the British colonist, a newspaper in Victoria, Canada, published an account of a gorilla-type creature captured in the area. Other accounts followed according to the Canadian Encyclopedia. Sasquatch book author John Green compiled a list of 1,340 sightings through the 19th and 20th centuries, and it has continued on today, with Bigfoot sightings reported every day. Now, who said giants have to be human-like? In 2021, the two-meter skull of a new species of giant ichthyosaur had been discovered, the earliest known. While dinosaurs ruled the land, ichthyosaur and other aquatic reptiles ruled the waves, reaching similarly gargantuan sizes and species diversity. Ichthyosaurs derive from an as yet unknown group of land-living reptiles and were air-breathing themselves, says lead author Dr. Martin Sander, paleontologist at the University of Bonn and research associate with the Dinosaur Institute at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. From the first skeleton discoveries in the southern England and Germany over 250 years ago, these fish saurians were among the first large fossil reptiles known to science long before the dinosaurs. Excavated from a rock unit called the Fossil Hill Member in the Augusta Mountains of Nevada, the well-preserved skull, along with a part of the backbone, shoulder, and forefin, date back to the Middle Triassic 247.2 to 237 million years ago, representing the earliest case of reaching epic proportions. As big as a large sperm whale at more than 55.78 feet long, this is the largest animal yet discovered from that time period, on land or in the sea. In fact, it was the first giant creature to ever inhabit Earth that we know of. Number 7. Giant in Canada. Recently, a TikToker named Andrew Dawson posted a video of a giant in May 2022 standing on top of a mountain in Canada. He zooms into a mountain and there you can see a large person. Andrew calls it a giant, and I agree with him because there's no way that it's a human. After his post, he reported to having interactions with the CIA and Canadian CSIS, as well as claims that he was being being stalked after the post. He also uploaded a post entitled "I'm Scared," where he informed viewers that they might not see him post ever again, but that everything was true. He then posted another TikTok of what appears to be military vehicles on top of the mountain where he saw the giant, which is suspicious. Since that post, Andrew has not been seen on TikTok or any other form of social media, sparking plenty of theories about his whereabouts. His videos have gained millions of views, but suddenly the comments were turned off. Now, with this being TikTok, things have gotten pretty wacky, but it seems like the full story may never be told. His videos seem so real, but his behavior with everything was frightening. Did the government do this to hide the fact that there are giants? Who knows? Number 6. Remains in a cave. A prehistoric human skeleton has been found in a cave system that was flooded at the end of the last ice age 8,000 years ago, according to a cave diving archaeologist on Mexico Caribbean's coast. Octavio del Rio said he and fellow diver Peter Broger saw the shattered skull and skeleton partially covered by sediment in a cave near where the Mexican government plans to build a high-speed tourist train through the jungle. We don't know if the body was disposed there or if that is where the person died, said Del Rio. He said the skeleton was located about 26 feet underwater, about 1/3 of a mile into the cave system. Some of the oldest human remains in North America have been discovered in the sinkhole caves known as the cenotes of the country's Caribbean coasts. Del Rio said there's a lot more to study that has to be done in order to correctly interpret, noting that dating, some kind of photographic studies, and some collection would be needed to determine exactly how old the skeleton is. Number 5. Sightings in Mexico. During November and December 2022, 3 different TikTok users posted videos of what they believed to be giants. All 3 videos were filmed in Mexico, but they were filmed in different locations. One video shows the side of a hill with many houses. On top of the hill, there appears to be a giant walking around. This being seems huge, too big to be a normal human being. A commenter said the fact that you can see it clearly from right there, no normal human can be seen like that, that monster has to be at least 20 feet tall. Another video was captured of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. The caption of the video said 40-foot giant caught on camera walking on mountaintops in Mexico. Now, I don't think it's 40 feet tall, that's an exaggeration, but it is something giant up there. It's a tall black silhouette that's walking. You can see their legs as they take steps and both of their arms. Now, the third video shows what appears to be some sort of mountain or cave. There's a hole in the side of it and there's a very large man looking out. He seems to be staring at the person recording and backs up and goes back into the rocks. So is there a giant in Mexico? I think so. Number 4. Ancient burial mounds. There is very credible documented evidence that giant skeletons were found across America in the late 1800s. In New England, skeletons unearthed in ancient burial mounds were measured at between 7 feet and 10 feet tall. Well-respected newspapers reported these findings at the time, which points to the credibility of their source. In fact, there are several documented findings of giant skeletons from all over America. There's evidence that the bones of giants measuring over 2 meters in height were found in tombs across Sardinia. This was covered in an episode of Forbidden History called The Mystery of the Giants. There are some reports suggesting that during the 19th century, the Smithsonian Museum in America was very keen to purchase the bones of giants found by civilians, only for them to never see the light again. There's a similar story in Sardinia, with farmers in more modern times uncovering massive bones and teeth and handing them over to the authorities, only to hear nothing more about them. Number 3. Giant of Castelnau. Giant of Castelnau refers to 3 bone fragments discovered by Georges Vacher de Lapinge in 1890. It consisted of a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft. According to Georges, the fossil bones may belong to one of the largest humans known to have existed. He estimated from the bone size that the human may have been about 11 feet and 6 inches tall. His findings were published in the journal La Nature in 1890. The bones were dated in the Neolithic period, since they were found at the very bottom of the Bronze Age burial tumulus. Writing in the journal La Nature, he describes the bones in detail. I think it's unnecessary to note that these bones are undeniably human, despite their enormous size. The first is the middle part of the shaft of the femur, 14 centimeters length, and the circumference of the bone is 16 centimeters. The second piece is the middle and upper part of the shaft of a tibia. The circumference is 13 centimeters, and the length of the fragment is 26 centimeters. The third, very singular, was regarded as the lower part of the humerus. The volumes of the bones were more than double the normal pieces which they correspond. The bones of the giant were studied at the University of Montpellier and examined by Monsieur Sabatier, professor of zoology, and Monsieur Delange, professor of paleontology. Number 2. Patagonia. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan took time out of his busy schedule of sailing around the world to stop in what is now Patagonia, where he found a naked giant dancing and sitting on the shore. Magellan ordered one of his men to make contact and to be sure to reciprocate the dancing and singing to demonstrate friendship. It worked. The man was able to lead the giant to a small island offshore where the great captain waited. Describing the scene was a scholar along for the journey, Antonio Pigafetta, who kept a diary of the journey that was later turned into a book. He wrote, "When he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid, and he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist, and had a big booming voice." On that small island, Magellan and his men gave the giant food and drink, then made the mistake of showing him a mirror, wherein the giant, seeing himself, was greatly terrified, leaping back so that he threw 4 of our men to the ground. But once things calmed down, the explorers proceeded to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunting with them and even building a house to store their provisions while on shore. Number 1. 7-foot skeletons. Over 1,000 accounts of 7-foot and tall skeletons have reportedly been unearthed from ancient burial sites over a 200-year period in North America. Newspaper accounts, town and county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, photos, and Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented this. These skeletons have been reported from coast to coast with strange anatomic anomalies such as double rows of teeth, jawbones so large as to fit over the face of the finder, and elongated skulls documented in virtually every state. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood at over 7 feet in their annual reports, including one example that was 8 feet tall and a skull with a 36-inch circumference, and an average human skull is about 20 inches in circumference, reported from Anna, Illinois in the Smithsonian Annual Report of 1873. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 real giants who once roamed the earth. Do you think giants are real? Let us know in the comments down below, and make sure you like and subscribe.
We have Brahim Takiula. Now he's actually joint 10th alongside a guy called Morteza, but I could only choose one to be at number 10, I'm afraid, so sorry Morteza, you're still pretty tall though. Born in 1982, Brahim is from Morocco and stands at 8'1". He underwent treatment in Paris in 2006 to help treat the tumour that was causing his unstoppable growth. Now thankfully it worked, and the growth hormones in his blood returned to a normal level. Despite this though, Brahim is still famous for apparently having the largest feet on the planet at 15 inches, and he actually has specially designed shoes to help support his weight. Alright, next up for our number 9 now, we have Bernard Coyne. Now he was born in 1897 in Iowa, and when he was conscripted into the US Army during World War I, he was measured at being 8'2" tall. Bernard had something called daddy long leg syndrome, which involves his body totally ignoring the release of estrogen that's telling him to stop growing. Bernard died at the age of just 23 from a glandular disorder that left him with a hardening liver. At this point, some reports even put his height closer to 8'4". Alright, next up at number 8 we have Don Kohler. Born in 1925, Don was of normal height until he shot up at 10 years old and eventually reached 8'2" tall. Now if any of you guys watching this remember the 1970s, you might remember Don as the tallest person in the world at that time. What's interesting about him is that he actually had a twin sister who didn't share his extraordinary height. She remained at 5'9" tall, which meant the two held a world record for the biggest difference in height between two twins at 29 inches. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Vikas Upal from India, who was born in 1986. Although he was never officially measured by Guinness World Records, there have been a number of other organisations that confirmed his height was 8'3", making him the tallest man in India. Over the years there were a number of publications that put his height all the way up to 8'10", which would have put him at the number 2 spot on this list, but most people think that's a bit of an exaggeration. He had huge proportions. His hands were actually said to be 13 inches long and his feet 19 inches, but he did appear to be totally in proportion. Sadly though, Vikas died in 2007 after a failed brain tumor operation. Okay, for our number 6 now guys, we have Sultan Kösen. Born in 1982 in Turkey, Sultan is currently the tallest man in the world, standing at 8 foot and 3 inches. Here's a picture of him with the shortest man in the world at that time. Look at the difference. Like others on this list, he actually had a normal childhood until the age of 10, at which point he rocketed over 6 foot tall. His growth was caused by a tumor in his brain and it showed no signs of stopping into adulthood. In 2010, doctors attempted to remove the tumor by focusing radiation at it, and amazingly, it worked. It was a success. As of 2012, Sultan has officially stopped growing, but nobody seems to be taller than him yet. Alright, coming in at number 5 now, we have Edouard Beaupré. Born in 1881, Edouard is the tallest Canadian on this list and stood at 8 foot 3 inches tall. He was the oldest of 20 children, yes, 20. At age 9, he was 6 foot 1, that's the same height as me. But it wasn't just his height that made him remarkable, Edouard was also an impressive strongman. At the age of just 17, he reportedly lifted up an 800-pound horse. He also spoke French, English and 3 Native American languages. He spent the next 6 years touring with a circus before dying from a pituitary gland tumor at the age of 23. Alright, moving on to our number 4 now, we've got Väinö Mailarin. He was from Finland and was once the world's tallest living person. Interestingly, he was also the tallest soldier of all time as he was part of the Finnish Defence Forces. On multiple occasions throughout his 20s, he was measured at being 7 foot 3 inches tall, but interestingly, Väinö actually underwent a growth spurt in his late 30s and shot up over a foot to 8 foot 3 inches tall. Now if that wasn't impressive enough, he also apparently had huge hands that spanned the size of a bowling pin. What? Alright, coming in at number 3 now, we have John F. Carroll. This is an interesting one because John's case has been disputed over the years. He was born in 1932 and by age 27 he was measured at exactly 8 foot, but John had a severely disfigured spine, and without it, apparently he would have been 8 foot 7 3/4 inches. Born in Buffalo, New York, he became known as the Buffalo Giant after a growth spurt saw him grow 7 inches in just a few months. He was diagnosed with giantism, and although doctors tried to treat his spine condition, it did get worse, and John had actually shrunk 4 inches by the time he passed away at the age of 37. Okay, next up at number 2 now, we have John Rogan at 8 foot 9 inches. John was born in Tennessee in 1865 and was apparently a normal size up until the age of 13. Then he underwent a massive growth spurt that left him needing crutches to even stand up. By age 17, he couldn't walk at all. Unable to work for a living, John would stand at the train station and sell portraits of himself to curious tourists. He was said to always be friendly and easygoing. Although everybody knew he was probably the tallest man alive at that time, he wasn't officially measured until his death in 1905 and was buried under concrete to stop curious scientists from trying to study him. Alright, and finally, at number 1, we have the tallest human of all time, Robert Wadlow. Robert is the tallest confirmed living human of all time, standing at 8 foot and 11 inches, just 1 inch shy of 9 foot. His extraordinary height was caused by hypertrophy of the pituitary gland, which resulted in his body producing way too many growth hormones. Robert was born in Illinois in 1918. At the age of 5, he was already wearing clothes meant for 17-year-olds. The following year, he actually outgrew his own parents, and by the time he was 8 years old, he stood at 6 foot 2. That's actually an inch taller than I am now. Now sadly, Robert died due to an infection from a leg brace at the age of 22, and it took 12 pallbearers to carry his coffin.
Journals. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan took time out of his busy schedule of sailing around the world to stop in what is now Patagonia, where he found a naked giant dancing and singing on the shore. Magellan ordered one of his men to make contact and to make sure to reciprocate the dancing and singing to demonstrate friendship. It worked. The man was able to lead the giant to a small island offshore where the great captain waited. Describing the scene was a scholar along for the journey, Antonio Pigafetta, who kept a diary of the journey, and that was later turned into a book. When he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid, and he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist and had a big booming voice. On that small island, Maligan and his men gave the giant food and drink, then made the mistake of showing him a mirror, wherein the giant, seeing himself, was greatly terrified, wrote Pignafetta, leaping back so that he threw 4 of our men to the ground. But once things had calmed down, the explorers proceeded to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunting with them and even building a house to store the provisions while on shore. Number 9. Giant in Mexico. In December 2022, TikTok user Squatch Watch Project, who claims to be connecting the cryptid community, posted a video of what they claim is a giant. The text on the video reads, "Real giant caught on video in Mexico." The video shows what appears to be some sort of mountain or cave. There is a hole in the side of it, and there's a very large man looking out. He seems to be staring at the person recording and then backs up and goes back into the rocks. Many people in the comments made jokes, but a lot of them think it's real. One user commented, "What's going to be the government's excuse for this one? The video and the zoom on this is on point." Others are commenting that it's like the film The Hills Have Eyes. Now, is it a giant, a feral human being? Who knows, but whatever it is, I will be staying far away. Number 8. Giant complex. In 2012, a team of explorers and researchers discovered what they believed to be an ancient pyramid complex in the remote area of the Ecuador Amazonian jungle, one not known to the general public, internationally, or even within the county. Bruce Fenton, author and researcher, believes the complex may be the lost city of the giants, so named for the large giant-sized tools that were found in the vicinity, as well as the local legends that speak of a race of giant humans who once inhabited the region. At the discovery site, there was one extremely large pyramidal type structure of approximately 80 meters square base and 80 meters height with steeply inclined walls. This structure is made up of hundreds of large stone blocks weighing approximately 2 tons in weight. The large hill has a flat area at the top where many artifacts have been found. It looks like a paved wall, an ancient street or plaza with a 60-degree angle, perhaps the roof of a larger structure. Many of the stones were perfectly aligned, have sharp edges, and seem to have been sculpted by human hands, said Mr. Giovanni, who undertook an expedition to the site in April and May of 2013. Number 7. The skull. A team of international researchers studying an ancient skull determined it belongs to a newly discovered species that's more closely related to modern humans than Neanderthals, but others in the scientific community say the skull might belong to a mysterious but already known ancestor. The researcher study, published in the journal Innovation, said the skull came from a previously undiscovered human species that lived in northern China. Researchers have named the species Homo longi, which translates to dragon man. The skull is the largest Homo skull ever found, and the researchers say it belonged to a male in his 50s who lived in northern China between 146,000 and 296,000 years ago. The skull shows a face that would have been much larger than modern humans, with thick brow ridges and deeply set eyes, but shows a brain that would have been about the same size. The skull was reportedly found by a farmer in the northern Chinese city of Harbin during the early 1930s while he worked on a labor crew that was building a bridge. In 2018, it was given to a Beijing area university. Now, if the skull does belong to a new species, it's largely unclear what their lives looked like. It's also unclear how much they might contribute to the lineage of modern human. The DNA evidence suggests that if the hominin sees another hominin, they're happy to interbreed, even if their brow ridge is a little bigger or their skull is a little higher, said Karen Babb, a Midwestern University anthropologist who was not associated with the research. Number 6. Mysterious silhouette. In December 2022, a TikToker named MixMasterXL posted a video of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. They captioned the video, "40-foot giant caught on camera walking the mountaintops in Mexico." Now, I don't think it's 40 feet tall, that's an exaggeration, but it's something giant up there. It's a tall black silhouette that's walking, you can see their legs as they take steps, and both of their arms. Now, if this was a normal sized human, you wouldn't be able to see them that clear, or more that much. It's clearly something large looking down below from the mountain. Now the comments were mixed, with a lot of people thinking it was fake, but if it wasn't a giant, then what was it? Number 5. Ancient burial mounds. There is very credible documented evidence that giant skeletons were found across America in the late 1800s. In New England, skeletons unearthed in an ancient burial mound were measured between 7 feet and 10 feet tall. While respected newspapers reported these findings at the time, which points to the credibility of their source. In fact, there are several documented findings of giant skeletons from all over America in the past, with most reports coming from the turn of the 19th century. There is also evidence that bones of giants measuring over 2 meters in height were found in the tombs across Sardinia. This was covered in an episode of Forbidden History called The Mystery of the Giants. There are some reports suggesting that during the 19th century, the Smithsonian Museum in America was very keen to purchase the bones of giants found by civilians, only for them to never see the light again. There is a similar story in Sardinia, with farmers in more modern times uncovering massive bones and teeth and handing them over to the authorities, only to hear nothing more about them. Number 4. Bone fragments. Giant of Castle No refers to 3 bone fragments, a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft, discovered by George Vacher de Leponge in 1890. According to de Leponge, the fossil bones may have belonged to one of the largest humans known to have existed. He estimated from the bone size that the human may have been about 11 feet 6 inches tall. His findings were published in the journal La Nature in 1890. The bones were dated to the Neolithic period, since they were found at the very bottom of the Bronze Age burial tumulus. Writing in the journal La Nature, de Leponge describes the bones in detail. I think it's unnecessary to note that these bones are undeniably human, despite their enormous size. The first is the middle part of the shaft of a femur, 14 centimeters in length, and the circumference of the bone is 16 centimeters. The second piece is a middle and upper part of the shaft of a tibia. The circumference is 13 centimeters and the length of the fragment is 26 centimeters. The third, very singular, was regarded as the lower part of the humerus. The volumes of the bones were more than double the normal pieces to which they correspond. Judging by the usual intervals of anatomical points, they also involve lengths almost double. The bones of the giant were studied at the University of Montpellier and examined by M. Sabater, professor of zoology, and M. Delage, a professor of paleontology. In 1892, the bones were studied carefully by Dr. Paul Louis André Keener, professor of pelagical anatomy at Montpellier School of Medicine, for which he admitted they represented a very tall race, but nevertheless found them abnormal in dimensions and apparently of morbid growth. Number 3. On a Mountain. In November 2022, a TikTok user named Painting with Lizards posted a video of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. Yes, Mexico again. They claim that they post all kinds of creepy content. Their video has the text "Giant spotted on the hills of Mexico. Is this the legendary Nephilim?" The video shows the side of a hill with many houses. On top of the hill, there appears to be a giant walking around. This being seems huge, too big to be a normal human being. A commenter said, "The fact that you can see it clearly from right there, no normal human can be seen like that. That monster has to be at least 20 feet tall." Now, this is the 3rd time a giant has been spotted in Mexico, and I'm honestly starting to believe it. All 3 sightings were in different areas, which to me makes it seem more believable. Do you think there's a giant in Mexico? Let me know in the comments down below. Number 2. North America. Over 1,000 accounts of 7-foot and taller skeletons have reportedly been unearthed from ancient burial sites over a 200-year period in North America. Newspaper accounts, towns and county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, photos, and Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented this. These skeletons have been reported from coast to coast with strange atomic anomalies such as double rows of teeth, jawbones so large as to fit over the face of the finder, and elongated skulls, documented in virtually every state. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood over 7 feet in their annual reports, including one example that was 8 feet tall, and a skull with a 36-inch circumference reported from Anna, Illinois in the Smithsonian Annual Report of 1873. Now, an average human skull is about 20 inches in circumference for reference. The Smithsonian Institution is mentioned dozen more times as the recipient of enormous skeletons from across the entire United States. And coming in at number 1 is the giant in Canada. Okay, so this isn't a jungle, but TikToker Andrew Dawson posted a video of a giant in May 2022 sitting on top of a mountain in Canada. He zooms into a mountain and there you can see a large person. Andrew calls it a giant, and I agree with him because there's no way that that is a human. It wouldn't be that big. After his post, he reported having interactions with the CIA and Canadian CSIS, as well as claims to being stalked after the post. He also uploaded a post entitled "I'm Scared," where he informed viewers that they might not see him post ever again, but that everything was true. He then posted another TikTok of what appears to be military vehicles on top of the mountain where he saw the giant, which is just suspicious. Since that post, Andrew has not been seen on TikTok or any other form of social media, sparking plenty of theories about his whereabouts. His videos have gained millions of views, but suddenly the comments were turned off. Now, with this being TikTok, things have gotten pretty wacky, but it seems that the full story may never be told. Andrew's obituary was actually posted, indicating that he passed away, leaving family members behind, but did he fake his death? Was it a setup? His video seems so real, but his behavior with everything was frightening. Did the government do this to hide the fact that there are giants? Who knows?
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about the real-life Men in Black. Yeah, we got footage of the real-life Men in Black. Click the video now to find out more.